Hello, this is a first draft for a paper I'm writing, an essay, which I'll also do a recording of later once I get things hammered out. But I just want to express what I feel inside when I hear readings from the Bible or readings from the Quran or different dogmatic religious beliefs or texts. Um, Now, like how you interpret that is, of course, up to every individual, I believe, but not everyone believes that. Um, so I'm just speaking about the literal interpretation of dogmatic beliefs within cultures. And I'm going to talk about this culturally, not just religiously, because I already got in an argument earlier today about religious Christian dogmas. And it got heated, so I don't want to go back into that mode because it's easy for me to do. It's easy for me to battle the Christian fundamentalism that I grew up hearing with my own, uh, you know, liberal uh, proselytizing or speech giving, okay, my own ranting. Because I can rant, I can raise my voice as loud as the loudest preacher. I can speak with fire and brimstone as much as the most, hateful, uh, you know, God fearing Christian. But as a pagan that's polycultural, okay, I'm not just polyamorous, I'm polycultural, I'm polytheistic. So I believe it's okay to believe in many gods, to be affectionate, to love more than one person, like within a family for sure. Most people can accept that, okay? That you try, even with children, you try not to pick a favorite. You want to at least love each of them a little bit, okay? You don't just pick one parent, right? You try to love both of your parents. It might be hard, okay? And maybe we don't maybe we're not as successful as we might be if we lived another life. But we each have our own lives to live, although there is certainly communal collectivism in Western culture. Not as much, maybe, as in Asian culture, but in the West, we do, want to get along, go along to get along, that kind of thing. We want to be accepted. We want to be popular for the most part. And when we're not, sometimes, like when, I was one of the last ones picked for dodgeball. I'm according to my memories of grade school. And it was because I was smaller and weaker than most people. My aim was not as good, so I wasn't as good as hitting other people with the ball as other people were, as certainly the athletes. And, I remember how that felt. And so, part of me does embrace anti establishment, anti authoritarianism. Because what else am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to just accept that I'm not going to be the best at a lot of things and just be subservient and just try to, yeah, for the most part, get along. But when it comes to having some self esteem for oneself, this becomes a problem because you either have always got to be a submissive sheep and go, "Yes, master, you're correct. You're better than I am at everything." Or you can stand up for yourself and say, "Okay, you think that, well, I think this." And we're going to be at odds. We're going to, wrestle around with this a little bit, and you might beat the crap out of me, but you know, you've self defense is a natural tendency for good reason. It's called survival. So, I mean, you could argue herd mentality is also part of survival, but I'm not going to get too much into, you know, the fight or flight issues of nature and, you know, nature versus nurture in this talk. But back to cultures. You know, what culture am I 100%? Okay, what religion, what nation, what ethnicity am I 100% of? So my first way of trying to answer that would be American. I'm fucking American, all right? Okay, but that depends on the definition and what the percentage means. Because I'm not Native American, you know, certainly not, I don't have any of the tribal bloods that were here before European immigrants. Okay. So I could say that I'm 100% American in that it includes so many other cultures and North American, USA, DC, Christian style to be specific, but that's not well defined either. And I'll break it down. I was born Methodist because my mother and father went to Methodist church. Well, my father wasn't Methodist. Okay, so I was half Methodist. But we went to Methodist church. Why? Because mom was Methodist because of her family, although they were raised Baptist. Okay. All right. So the main reason we were Methodist was because Uncle Bruce, who lived in Iowa, so coming from Florida to Iowa, were Methodist, and that influenced my mother to be a good Methodist and go to Methodist church. All right. But we did that in Harper's Ferry, near D.C., not even near Iowa. So, you know, how similar was my culture growing up to the Midwest culture? Okay, more similar than maybe, you know, a foreign country. Then I went to Catholic high school as far as the next big Christian influence on me. St. John's Catholic High School, Prospect Hall in Frederick, Maryland. Now, in between, I went to a very agnostic school, but I'm just going to stick with trying to define myself as Christian American right now, because I am, to some degree, and that percentage is debatable. Okay, it's not quite like a DNA test, which can still be debatable depending on how you interpret the DNA and what I don't know all the science behind testing DNA, but I know that they changed the interpretations of it according to what I've experienced. Okay, so to some extent, I am from the time from being a child, I was raised Methodist and Catholic to some extent. Okay, I attended the masses, so in other words, I was indoctrinated by knowing what the belief system is, by being a part of it, by being a part of the culture, by being a part of the community, and hearing the Latin, hearing the Bible. And as I learned more about other beliefs and other ways of thinking, I realized I'm pretty agnostic, actually. And this means I ask questions and hold positions which are considered heresy by the dogma of the church. Now, individuals might go, well, I don't completely agree with my church on this. Well, you fucking go to that church, don't you? Okay, shut the fuck up. No, but seriously, I don't always want to be that rude, but that's kind of how I feel about it. Is a lot of people of different denominations will go, well, yes, you're a sinner, but we're all sinners, So, that gets me into what I think about as a Christian, because part of me is Christian, Okay? It's like being partly gay. I can accept there's a part of me that, can look at a man and go, that's an attractive man. Now, how sexually attracted somebody is would, I think, increase the percentage of that gayness. So my percentage of being gay is very low. I'm not that sexually attracted to, people who call themselves males. All right. But trying to stick with religion for now. Yes, part of me is Christian, okay, because I was raised in it and I am immersed in it almost constantly, even now that I'm a pagan, and I'll talk about atheism and paganism now. But when I started to consider atheism, I said, yeah, I think it is possible and probable to some degree that there are no gods, okay? That there's no higher powers that, imaginary Santa Claus type people that are using their magic to do everything for us, or causing us to do everything, or even that there's this deity that created the universe and the earth, and then, just because whatever sick fantasies they have, wanted to allow us free will and blah 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 blah, the rest. I do have a lot of doubts about that. So, am I part atheist? Maybe. Or is that just part of being agnostic, that I think that's a possibility? Now, I consider myself pagan because I worship nature. And I love mythology. I love all that pagan mythology that's considered heresy and evil and satanic. I'm not, the Satanism is fascinating to me and interesting, but again, for me, it's why I'm pagan is more about nature and not about just being satanic. Because I think the reason I don't call myself satanic is, first of all, I don't worship the devil as I perceive the devil to be. Okay? Because if I were to worship Satan or Lucifer, I would be Christian. What? That seems like the opposite, doesn't it? No, that's part of the same religion. It's opposite within that religion, within the religion of Christianity. But the artifice of Christianity is limited in scope. Okay? Now, there's certain aspects of it which I will grant my brothers and sisters in Christianity that, yes, can be applied universally. But guess what? It's not most of the parts in the Bible. Most of the parts that I hear from the Bible, that I know about, that I've heard since I was a child, are, my God's better than your God. My God's the best. In fact, there's no other gods. All else are false. All others are inferior. We're the best. That type of rhetoric. Now you can say, well, that's not the exact wording. You're being a little bit harsh, aren't you? Yeah, were they a little bit harsh about Sodom and Gomorrah? Were they a little bit harsh with the witch burnings? Were they a little bit harsh with the Salem witch trials when they hung the witches? Oh, but that's not most Christians. Well, are they participating in what's called Christianity? If they are, there's a responsibility that needs to happen. Same with Muslims. I don't get on Muslims' cases just because I don't encounter them as much. I'm not being terrorized by Muslim terrorists. Most of what's being pushed on me is by Christians. Okay? So that's why most mass shootings are by, older Christian males who have totally snapped, and they go on a shooting rampage because they're like, it's this it's a problem. It's what caused the Crusades, okay? Where, masses of Christians went to plunder the Holy Land in the name of Christ to take it back, to take it back, as though it was ever theirs totally to begin with, or should have been theirs totally to begin with, from the infidels. And this is what my family did. This is what my ancestors did. This is how they got their wealth. This is how they got their barony. But it wasn't just Muslims that we attacked. It was Jews. So we were very anti-Semitic, certainly in Germany, where there were Jewish pogroms way before the Nazi Holocaust. Okay, and if you those of us that want to claim responsibility as part of Christian culture need to not only admit that, but be able to talk about that. As certainly if we're going to talk about sin at all, which I think is a flawed concept, ironically. But anyway, yeah, I have a lot of Christian friends, of course. Brother Father J. Hess, shout out to you if you're listening. I want to say this. I don't expect Christians to 100% conform to what I'm saying, just like I don't think they should expect me to conform 100% to what they're saying, because certainly within Christianity, I know this for a fact. Not everyone agrees. Guess what? That's why we have different denominations. That's why people are called heretics all the fucking time. Oh, he said a bad word. That's not what Jesus would say, or that's not what God would want. So Christian culture is constantly judging. And that might just be human nature. Okay, but we're talking about clubs or cultures that we're a part of. It's very hard to escape a dominant culture when you're within it. So what I can do is try to say I'm different. I'm going to admit I'm a little bit different. You can call me a heretic. You can call me a Satan worshiper. You can call me whatever you want. But I'm going to try to understand who I am, which the best word I have is pagan, because I'm less worried about bragging about my gods, which is what I consider mainstream Christianity to do, and to ostracize, to exile other people as not being in my club. And I'm more interested in trying to include other people into respecting nature and to respecting other people's beliefs. So when I make fun of Christianity or mock religious zealots, they go, how dare you make fun of somebody else's religion? Well, they're not just making fun of my religion. They're saying that it's evil, and they're calling me evil and sinful. So for me to tease them a bit and to kind of give it back to them, so to speak, to me is not a big deal. It should be expected that when you push and bully someone, someone will try to teach you not to do that. And it may be a harsh lesson. You may get a beat down. So you might beat other people down. You might say, my God's better than yours. He did this, and the Bible says this. And then someone else with a Quran, might fucking smack you in the face and go, well, my Bible says this. My Quran says this. And then you're like, well, you just hit me. So this is how holy wars start, okay? Is like, it has to be just my way or no way. And that we can't even come to terms on anything. All right? This is how holy wars get started, is you can't talk to the other faiths because they're so different. They're not part of my culture, my little clique. I mean, it's cool if you have a little cult and you do that, you go to, because not every cult is going to have a demagogue. Not every cult is going to have, a Jim Jones or, some crazy leader that's going to, in fact, most churches, I call them cults because they are sects. Okay, they're basically little units that have specific beliefs that, they do on their property, and they, their doors may be closed or open, but, you're a subculture, okay? There's a lot of loaded words that we don't like to use, like I was discussing with Brother Father J. Hess, that the issue of was Jesus a radical? And he said, he didn't. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but basically, it's hard to talk about that because it's a loaded term, and that people have a negative connotation when when someone calls their savior a radical. A lot of times, especially if they're trying to be traditional, as most people are in a culture, right? Most people that belong to a defined culture, a traditional culture, want to be traditional or conventional, at least. Okay. What else do I want to talk about? So, I also agree with Brother Father J. Hess that mystery is okay in belief. We don't always need to have strict definitions for everything. In fact, it may be impossible to agree on not only all religious concepts, but even linguistic semantics. As languages evolve and living languages flow organically and never totally conform to rules during the period of time. I'm editing my essay as we go. So, as what is popular in speech or writing may deviate from grammatical dogma and the lectures of scholars. This is true. Middle ground or meeting someone part ways, halfways is ideal, but not always possible, especially because it's like, one person might want to visit somebody else's house but not want to have company. Some things are just going to be lopsided, or vice versa. Okay. Negotiating for cooperation in community versus exiling and isolating by exclusion and neglect. So, to avoid holy wars and to avoid worse problems in society, this is how we need to strive for peace, is that you use the greatest concepts that I think the good Christians out there are using, which is peace, love, and community or sharing. Those three concepts are really important. Peace, love, and sharing. Important for community. So we can make peace with our enemies, assuming we are capable of doing it with our friends and families to some extent. So if we can love our friends and families to some extent, then, and have some kind of peace with them, even if half the day we're arguing, hopefully by nighttime we can make up a little bit. But making peace with enemies is, somebody said, I think it was in Game of Thrones, that, or somewhere that has a lot of wisdom thrown in there, some fantasy. But that we make peace with our enemies because those are the people that we need to make peace with. Because we already have, it assumes, of course, you already have peace with everybody else. And it's only your enemies that you don't have peace with. So if there's anyone to make peace with, it's the enemies, because we should already have peace, right, in the rest of our lives. But anyway, those are my thoughts on what percentage I am of a certain culture. Okay, so let's see. How Irish am I? How English am I? How German am I? How Scandinavian am I? Interesting questions. We could go by DNA, but I actually like what a lot of Native Americans are saying, which is the DNA is pretty much fucking bullshit. Because, why is that? Now, Amish wouldn't say that because Amish don't like cuss words. But I'm saying it, okay, because if you're considered part of a tribe, it's because of your participation in it and how other people view you. in that community, or in communities, subsets, subcultures of that culture. Not just how you view yourself or what the science says about your DNA. On that, I will start up some crazy, my own crazy church music. I hope you enjoy some pagan church music.